Are you today, kind sir?
Right. I'll just put my glasses on.
Do I need to put my glasses on?
Just so I can read my writing. Right. Can you care to tell me how you came about meeting Roy?
Absolutely. My first meeting with Roy was I was going on the Wembley tour with a group of guys called the Nashville Super Pickers. And I don't know if you remember them or not.
Was that a country music festival?
It was a country music festival.
Yeah.
And we had a record happening over in Europe called Bread and Butter. And it was an old New Beat song. And it's something that we recorded for Wesley Rose. Wesley Rose loved what our group was doing in the studio. We had a studio group in Nashville. And he got us a deal with Magnum Force in Europe, who is Nigel Molden, I believe, is the head of that company. And so we were going to do our tour over there, and we were going over on the plane, and a friend of mine that I went to high school with, named Jimmy Johnson, was working with Roy Orbison. And so he just says, "Bucky, I want you to meet Roy." And I'd always wanted to meet Roy, so I shook his hand. And I told him, I said, "I've always admired your music and always admired you, and I look forward to hearing you sing in person." I had never heard him sing in person, but many times on the radio, and of course like everybody else. And so we went and we were doing our tour, and we were opening for Roy in all the places on the Wembley Festival, in Denmark and Ireland and Sweden and Norway and Germany and
you went to Berlin.
Yeah, into Berlin.
Yeah,
and,
I remember.
And we were in Berlin, Germany, and Roy's guitar player that he had got sick and had to go back to the States, and they came to me and asked me would I play the last 3 concert dates with them, because he knew that I had done a lot of studio work, and plus his bassist Jimmy Johnson was an old friend of mine. We went to school together, and we were both from Canton, Mississippi, and they call us the Hick Brothers because we were so hicky and country. And so anyhow, I said, yeah, I'd love to play the last 3 concerts, and so we did. And I never will forget the first night I went down to play with him. It was. I had no idea this was going to happen. We were in Berlin, and it was. I was going to go out. I'm kind of a camera buff, I like to go out and take pictures of everything, and I always carried a camera with me, and just took pictures of anything I saw, scenery, people, everything. And so it started snowing, and I said, well, I'm stuck in the room. I'm not going out in this snowstorm. And they came and knocked on the door and said, would you do the last 3 concert dates? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And they gave me a tape to listen to all the songs.
Do a run through and chord changes.
Yeah, and I really didn't need them too much because I kind of knew most of the songs. And I remember we went down and we did our little show, the Nashville Super Pickers, and then I and as a matter of fact, I just found a photo that the Nashville Super Pickers, we had a group of guys. It was Buddy Herman, who played on a lot of Elvis stuff. He was the drummer, and it was Henry Strelecki, who was the bassist, who played on just many hit records. And Barry Walsh was the keyboard player, and I was the guitar player. And Barry took a picture. He took 2 shots that I just found of the first job that I ever played with Roy. And I've got those, and I'm wearing the old Nashville Super Picker vest. It was like a Superman emblem on the back, and it was kind of corny, but I remember going down and playing with Roy that night, and I was just listening to him sing, and I was kind of getting into it and just playing along, and he turned around and he was just kind of grinning at me, and I was grinning at him, and we were just kind of grooving along and rocking along and just having a lot of fun. And I didn't realize it at the time, but everybody in the band said, as soon as the show was over, they says, we have never seen Roy have so much fun. And I says, really? And I thought maybe in somehow that I wonder what it was, and they seemed to lead me to believe that it was kind of I was just playing some older things maybe that he might have liked, and so I don't really know. I hate to sound like I have some kind of inflated ego to think that I made Roy have a good time, but I'll tell you,
but
it
you
was
developed
like
your style.
Well, it was a thing that he spurred something out of me that maybe I in turn spurred something out of him. It was like kind of like we were feeding off each other. It's kind of like this one picture that Glenn has in his house. It was in the book Dark Star. It's like Roy's kind of looking at me grinning. And we just had this thing.
Yeah.
Ever since the first time we walked on stage together, we just had a big time. And he brought it out in me, and maybe I brought
because
something
really,
out in him.
you were thrown in at the deep end on that first.
but man, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. I loved it.
So who was the rest of the lineup of the band when you actually joined?
It was Jimmy Johnson on bass. It was Jim Turbo Kirby on keyboards. My old buddy Turbo. It was, oh gosh.
Was Terry Woodlake around in those days?
No, it was Terry Elam was playing percussion, and it was, I think it was Richard Law was on background vocals. Barbara South. Gosh. Boy, you really caught me off guard with that question. That's a good question. I wish I could answer it better. I'm trying to think of the drummer's name.
Becky.
No, not Buttry. Buttry came along later. This was in 1981. Oh, Lord, Martin, you really caught me off guard. I can't. You might want to turn the tape off and let me think. I can't.
We'll go on to another one.
Okay.
What's your best memory of Roy?
Just there's so many of them, man. How much time do you have? When do you have to go back to England?
Sunday.
Sunday. You don't have enough time. I mean, all of them were good memories, man. He was just the. First of all, he was my buddy. We became very, very close. We would take trips together. We'd hang out together. I'd go look for clothes, and I'd say, I'd call Roy up and I'd say, hey man, I found these leather coats, and he says, well, bring them over and let's look at them, and I'd take leather clothes over to Roy, and he'd look at them and he'd say, I like that one and that one and that one, and I'd actually pick out stuff when, like I remember we were going to.
Was this for stage or for personal wear?
Personal.
Yeah.
Personal. But I take that back because I got us some stage wear when we went to Australia. We wore these little zippered outfits that you could wash them and hang them up, and they'd be dry in 30 minutes. But so many good memories. I mean, we took trips together. We hung out together. We take walks together. We were on the bus together. We played together. We ate together. We'd watch movies together. I mean, I could really go into depth.
Did you ever get into the model airplane? Now,
you know what? I'll tell you who was really into the model airplane thing more than I was Gene Shepard's husband, Benny Birchfield. Benny was really into it, but I know Roy would tell me what he was into was he was really into the authentic colors of the airplanes, especially the German ones. He wanted them to be painted exactly
the right shade of black.
The right shade of whatever the shade was, and he knew that. He knew about those things, and I did not get into the planes like he did, but I know we watched all that German, all about Hitler, and all the aircraft and the bunkers, and he was an expert on that, truly an expert on that.
What's your own musical background for benefit of everybody?
Oh man, to benefit everybody, I'm totally uneducated. I have a -22 IQ in music. I don't know.
You started off somewhere though.
Well, I started off in Mississippi, and like I was telling Glenn the other night, I started off washing chicken trucks, and I had a job where I could go to school half a day and I'd work half a day, and this was called a DO program, a Diversified Occupations program, and I would I already had a job playing in a nightclub. I was playing like 6 nights a week, and I had my own band like the last 2 years in high school. And my last year in high school, I went in this program, and the guy asked me, the teacher asked me, he says, "What did you want to do for a living?" And I says, "I want to be a musician." And he says, "What are you doing? What do you want to do?" And I says, "Well, I want to be a musician." And I told him I already had a job, playing. He says, "Well, you can't do that. You got to have a real job." So I went out and I got a job washing some chicken trucks at a Gulf service station. And the guy gave me a job. It was for $5 a day, and this was like 1959 or somewhere thereabouts. And I would go to school from 8 o'clock till 12 o'clock, and then I'd have an hour break for lunch, and then I'd go wash chicken trucks and pump gas with 2 black gentlemen. And they would always they knew that I played, because see, after I got through working at the service station from 1 o'clock till 7 o'clock in the evening, I would have like 2 hours before I had to be at my job where I played at night. So I would go to my job, and the 2 black guys would tell me that, like B.B. King is playing here at like the Rainbow Club, and then they tell me Albert King is playing at the Moonlight Inn, and Bobby Blue Bland is playing at the New Club Desire. And so I know I'm taking you around the world to tell you about your question, but as far as my musical background really came from the blues and from rock and roll, because they told me, I said, "Boy, I'd like to hear some of these guitar players," because me being a guitar player, I wanted to go out and hear other guitar players. Because back
watch
then,
their styles, and you could pick things up that you didn't think of yourself, and then you can improvise.
That's right. That's right. And I was just a young kid, wanting to learn how to play. And there weren't hardly any guitar players around, that I could study under. So the 2 black guys would tell me about this, and they told me, they said, "Come down to the New Club Desire. Bobby Blue Bland is playing down there tonight." So I drove down to the club, and I went up in the front of the club, and there were nothing but black people there. I was the only white person, and I was kind of scared to go in. I felt kind of out of place, because I knew how, being from Mississippi and blacks, I knew how some of the white people felt about blacks, even though I didn't feel that way, and my mother didn't bring me up to be like that. But I walked around to the back of the club and stood on a couple of boxes, and I looked through this huge window fan that was sucking all the smoke out of the club, and I could see Bobby Blue Bland, I could see his drummer and his bass player and background singers and guitar player, and I learned something that first night. The guitar player, I was telling Glenn about this the other night, the guitar player was playing with a drumstick instead of a guitar pick. I mean, he did play with a guitar pick sometimes, but he would take a drumstick and hit it with his right hand up against the strings, and it would give an effect like da 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 da. It would bounce off the strings like this. I don't know if I'm conveying
Is that before they
this.
had the tremolo arms? Or?
Oh, this was totally different from a tremolo arm. No, they had tremolo arms. Tremolo arms went back to 1949 when Paul Bigsby.
Les Paul.
Well, actually before that, Paul Bigsby, had that tremolo arm. But that's where I started, and then I had some really good friends that were black, that I played with, and that was, I guess my roots were more in blues and rock and roll, and just being from the South, kind of like Roy. Roy was kind of, being in the
You're
southwestern.
soaked in the surroundings. And,
Yeah.
And got what you.
But you know, like I told you up front, I don't have any. I've just been around for a long time. And I've been in a lot of musical situations, and so that's my experience.
Did
I went
you
to
get any work as a session player, or you just drifted in?
No, I made my living doing sessions for a long time, for about 15 years, and you know, and I've got my own studio in Nashville now, but. I did do sessions, and there's a website that you can go to that shows a little bit of my discography.
Right.
And
is that the Arrow Productions?
It is.
Right.
And you know, it'll show a few things on there. And I always thought I wanted to get all the gold records that I played on, and I found it really hard to keep up with all that, you know, and a lot of people won't give them to you, you know. I remember I played on this one thing, I won't name who it was, but it sold like 7 million copies in 30 days, and I never got a copy of the gold record. I think I have seen some other people that had it, but you know, it just, you know, sometimes musicians get that stuff and sometimes they don't. And,
right. It is rumoured that a sound engineer recorded all the performances of Roy's during the time that he was with him. Is this true?
Tommy Dills.
Right.
Tommy Dills and Bob Underwood. He recorded quite a few of them. As a matter of fact, we would have little jam sessions up in the room. He would have like a little 4-track recorder. And he would turn it on, and we'd you know, record things. And we actually got Roy in the room one night, and it was I can't remember it because there was a lot of alcohol and drugs going on. Not that I was part of that, you know, but I remember we got Roy up in the room one night, and he was playing along, and we were just jamming on something, and it went on for like 30 minutes, and it could be a whole album. It was great. It was great. You know, Roy usually didn't do that kind of thing, but I know Tommy Dills did record a bunch of them. I don't think he recorded all of them, but I know there's a lot of bootleg tapes going around. I don't know if that would be.
The sources of the rumour have it that I think the estate have tried to get hold of them, but basically
the estate.
Yes, as in Barbara.
And she's tried to get a hold of them?
And he won't part with them.
He won't?
No.
Well, I guess I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure she could listen to them if she wanted to enjoy them.
Yeah. Were there any rehearsals before a tour, or did you just do sound checks before each show?
No, we didn't rehearse before a tour. We did do sound checks. Everywhere we went, we would do a sound check, and you know, sometimes Roy would come to them, sometimes not. Most of the time, not. You know, Bob Underwood would come up and sing a song. He'd come up and sing something like Mean Woman Blues. And, you know, that's how we get the level on Roy's voice, you know. And then Tommy Dills would get the level on everything else.
Now, you've just mentioned Mean Woman Blues, and I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
There has been quite a lot of speculation as to what the lyrics are to a particular line. My interpretation was, boy, she makes old Roy here flip, or boy, she makes old Roy O flip. Do you go along with that, or do you have a different point of view?
Well, you know, I just asked Roy point blank what he was singing there. And he says, boy, she makes old Roy half flip. And I says, what are you saying, Roy? And he says, I'm saying she makes me half flip because I never saw a woman that could make me flip all the way.
That's incredible.
And so, basically that's what it was. He never saw a woman that could make him flip all the way. So, that particular woman made him half flip.
Well, I think that's going to solve a mystery or end a controversy that's been going on for some time as to who's got the definitive explanation as to what these words are or are
that
not.
was straight from the horse's mouth. So.
Right.
Now, can I ask you a question?
You certainly can, yeah.
Is this going to just be written, or will it be? Are you going to play this tape somewhere?
It may get played in the chat room.
Oh, okay.
We have a chat room that runs every Sunday.
Okay.
Anybody that comes in, they can usually hear it.
So, pardon the accent, folks.
Oh, right. But it's basically to save me transcribing everything. I understand that you've actually brought, you've done your own tribute CD to Roy. Do you want to explain what that is?
Gosh, I mean, you said it pretty much right on. It's just a tribute to Roy. I tried to play it exactly the way that he would have sung it. I tried to do the same phrasing. I did everything in the same key. I used Jim Kirby on it, and Jim Kirby was the keyboard player, and I used Vince Barranco, who is another guy from Mississippi. He's a great drummer, and Jim Kirby did the strings and also played bass on it. So it was only 3 people doing that whole situation.
Are we talking of a vocal tribute, or are we talking instrumental?
No, it's an instrumental tribute. It's just totally instrumental. No, I would never attempt to do anything like that. You know, I think tributes are weird because, you know, I think if you're going to do a tribute, you need to not sound like that. Let's say if I were a singer and I was going to do a tribute to Roy, I wouldn't want to sing it like Roy. I would simply want to do a tribute in my own way of his songs. But what I did was, since I'm not a singer and I'm just a guitar player, I wanted to try and phrase it the way he did. I wanted to capture the way he did on an instrument. I wanted the instrument to sing like his phrasing. And even though I embellished in some places and added some little solos, you know, here and there, and did some little extra fills, but basically the instrumental tribute is pretty much the way he would have sung it, and in the same keys and with the same arrangements and with some of the same players that actually worked with him. But it's just got 10 songs on it.
Right. Does it have a name?
It's called A Tribute to Roy Orbison by his Guitarist.
And people can go to your website for details?
They can go to my website for details.
Right, which I'll put in.
And I've got another website too, which is just www.buckybarrett.com. And it offers the same thing on it.
What's your favourite Roy song? I mean, it's very hard, I appreciate, even myself. You try and pin somebody down and say, what is your number one favourite of the favourites?
Well, you know, that's a great question, because all of them are favorites, and then I could see, and I will answer your question in a minute, but, you know, it's like when we did Saturday Night Live, I saw that Dennis Hopper, who was the host of the show that night, I saw that his favorite song was Thank You, Glenn. Help me. I'm you know, when you get older, you start having brain failure. And it was the end drink. Thank you, Glenn.
Right.
Glenn Agritelli's sitting here with us. So anyhow, I saw, you know, it made me think, I need to re-listen to this, because that's Dennis Hopper's favorite song, and I love Dennis Hopper as an actor, and he was just incredible, one of the hardest working men in show business. I've always been a fan of his, and something that I really regret, the night, and I know I'm taking you around the world to answer your question, and I will answer it.
Cool.
I regret that when we did Saturday Night Live that I didn't get Dennis Hopper to sign that guitar, because Roy had the song in Dreams in Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the reason I'm telling you this is because I would hear other people say, boy, I like Crying, and boy, I like this, and boy, I like that, and I listen to every one of them, but I loved Crying because when we were on the bandstand, I remember some nights he'd sing it with so much feeling, and everything was right. There was just this thing that happened on the bandstand. He would sing with so much feeling. We'd all reach for our sunglasses.
Is that something you picked up from the audience?
Well,
the ambience, or
it was just a combination of everything, but it all stemmed from Roy and his ability to project something with so much feeling that your hair was just standing straight up on your head and on your arms and everywhere. And I know he would sing with so much feeling that we'd have to reach for our sunglasses and put on sunglasses, because he would touch every one of us.
Yeah.
Every one of us would reach for those shades, because we'd be crying because he was singing the song and what it said and the feeling, And
was he aware of this?
No, I don't think he was aware of it. He always sang it great. His worst performance was far superior to anything else. It's like Elvis said. He was the only guy that Elvis would go see in concert. And he was the Caruso of rock and roll. He was the greatest singer, and I'm so honored that I got to work with him. The amount of feeling that he would put out was just incredible. But anyhow, back to your original question, what was my favorite song? For some reason, I liked Running Scared. And, Roy'd come up to me sometime. He'd say, well, Buck, what you been doing? I'd say, I've been running scared, man. He'd say, I have too. And, it was just something about that, because I guess we're all, kind of running scared from something. And for some reason, when he would go into the last part of that song, then all at once, da 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 da, that just gave me cold chills. And that's what we wound up. The crowd response seemed to be more people liked that than I don't know. It was a better crowd response. It was more standing ovations, and he would end that song. He would walk off the bandstand, and then he'd come back and do an encore, and then he'd come back and sing that last note again, like a whole step up from where he normally would hit it. And then everybody's hair was doing this, and
so it just charged everybody up and gave them another charge, which it left them going away feeling happy, contented, and
I don't know. There's something about that song, but there was something about all of them if you really listen to them. And like I was telling you and Glenn and Wes earlier at lunch. Glenn is going to have this fabulous party tonight for the Orbison gathering, and he's opened his home up to all these fans and everybody from around the world. And I thought, what can I do to, add something to the greatness of this whole thing tonight? And I was sitting up in the hotel room earlier, and I was sitting there thinking, well, do I need to play something like maybe Crying or Blue Bayou, and I came up with something, and if I had a guitar here I could play it and show it to you, how Roy thought about some of these things musically. You know, I was explaining earlier about, you know, there's certain tones in a chord that you tend to go to within that chord, like a 1 and a 3 and a 5 make up like a major triad. You know, and that's what most chord tones are these. I mean, most melody lines will resolve to a tone within one of these tones within the chord.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was thinking about this, and I looked at it, and Roy, he would hear 6s against a major chord. He would hear major 7ths, which, like if you were to sing do re mi fa sol la ti, ti is like the 7 step. It's like a major 7. He would also sing the step before that, the 6. He would hear these things against major chords. It was very, very unique how he heard, and most people don't hear those 6s like that.
He obviously had a better perception of music.
He was very gifted in his melodic sense. He was very, very melodic. He put minor chords in, and he would put like 6 notes and minor major 7ths against the minor chords, which made them very, very beautiful.
But he'd give it that edge rather than the basic C, F, G.
There was nothing blasé about Roy Orbison.
No.
I mean, it was class all the way. It was. I mean, from his lyrics to the melody line, it was all just class, man. It was something very unique. And I'll tell you something else about his writings. You know, when you look at like phrases in a piece of music, you know, they're 8 or 12 or 16 bars. You know, well, his might be 10 bars. You know, it was very unique. And also like Burt Bacharach and Hal David. You know, Roy would compose things that would have like different time signatures in them. Like they would have like a 2/4 bar at the end of a phrase instead of it being 4/4 4/4 4/4 4/4. You know, just straight down the line, like 99% of the songs are. There would be like a 2/4 bar in there, and that's you know, that happens on Pretty Woman. I don't know if many people are aware of this, but musically, you know, when songwriters study this kind of stuff, it's you know, I think they really study words, but they you know, that's only half of it. You know, there's words and music. There's 50-50, you know, and what you have to do is you have to realize that there's 50% in music, and I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
I would think that Roy had got himself into a formula for working on a song. That must have obviously carried on over the years, but it's the intricacy that is applied to all the songs.
Well, you know, I don't think he was aware that he was doing it.
No.
But I think it's got so much to do with the hipness and the I mean, it's got this perennial value that, I mean, it's this is something that was there when he first did it, and it's something that'll be here after we're all eating strawberries by the roots. It's something that lasts.
He's taken a song. Have you heard him sing Danny Boy?
No.
He was obviously playing that. I mean, Danny Boy, if I'm just talking about, say, in the UK, you would probably get on a Saturday night in the local boozer, you may get somebody who wants to get up and sing it.
Right.
But they will do it in a very coarse manner. And it would like cheapen the song.
Right.
But to hear Roy's version, he's taken it and he's done something with it. That you think, hey, I mean, it goes on for nearly 5 minutes, that song. He changed the introduction to it. But it's just one of those things that you just want to hear over and go. It's on the covers.
Well, you know, I'll tell you something. Glenn played me something yesterday that just totally blew me away, and it was a cut that What was that on, Glenn? The cut of the slower version of.
That was on a DVD of, I believe it was the anthology, Roy Orbison anthology DVD that was put out by the estate.
Right.
That had Crying on it.
And I'll tell you what, man, it was a slow version, and his phrasing, it was slower than normal, than what we were used to playing it. Oh, I'll tell you, it just wrecked my mind. It was incredible. I mean, I was just totally spellbound.
So you used to carefully, you'd watch him practically purse his lips when he was
Yeah.
singing a song.
And I'll tell you something else about Roy. He had this, from his nose down, he was like totally relaxed. It's almost like if you had a shot of Novocaine and your whole face was numb. You know how your face gets numb when you go to the dentist and they give you a shot? It's like he was so relaxed, and I think that's part of the reason where he could hit those notes. I mean, he could go after those notes like, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And I remember Larry Gatlin. We were playing here in Texas one time, and Larry wanted to sing Crying, and he asked me, he says, Bucky, what key does Roy do Crying in? And I said, in D. And he says, oh no, man, the highest I can sing it is in C. And you know, Larry can sing way up in the clouds too. I mean, he's a great singer. But you know, Roy could, I mean, he could like just break the sound barrier. Man, he could get so high up there. And in his real voice, it wasn't falsetto.
I have heard him saying as in the past as well that he used to have this vibrato that used to come into the voice whether he wanted it or not. So if he wanted to do any recording without that vibrato, he had to do it early in the day, because by the time the evening come, it would be there whether he wanted it or not.
Yeah, I'll tell you something else. I always thought this would be the greatest Coke advertisement in the world, because Roy drank Coca-Cola. That was his favorite. He always wanted a Coke. He wouldn't drink a Pepsi. He wouldn't drink any of those other things. He said a real Coke coated his throat with some kind of syrupy thing, and he could do the on Pretty Woman. And I thought, man, what a great Coke advertisement. Coke should give him $1 million just to say that, you know.
Yeah.
But he was. I heard a musicologist, or I think it was a musicologist, talk about, they had actually analyzed Roy's voice. And if you listen to Roy, one of the really cool things that not very many people do is he would slide into the notes. He would slide up into the notes.
Yes,
you know, it's
not many people can do that.
No, and it's almost like, you know, it's almost like a fretless instrument, you know, like on a steel guitar or on a violin, you know, where you don't hear
tuning a guitar in, when you're tuning a string in.
That's right, when you tune
and
a
you're
string,
just
and
getting it there, and you're just trying to tune it in, and you could actually do that with his voice.
Yeah,
And that is absolutely incredible.
yeah, it is. It truly is incredible.
I mean, that's just something obviously you picked up during the time that you were with him.
Yeah. And I remember one time we were in Maine, and we had gone to a movie somewhere. We were out on the road, and we were on the bus, and Roy had eaten some popcorn. Are you running out of tea?
Yeah, I'm okay. I've got 30 minutes left.
30 minutes? Okay. We were in Maine, and Roy got a popcorn hull between his tooth and his gum, and he couldn't get it out. And so we had to go to the hospital. It was running him crazy. And so we went in, and he says, Buck, don't let them do anything to my teeth, because they're my sounding board. His teeth were perfect. He didn't have a cavity in his mouth. And they got the popcorn hull out. Of course, there's a lot more to the story, but you couldn't print it. Maybe you'll read about it in an upcoming book. Who knows what the world holds in store for Orbison fans.
Everybody's entitled to say their own thing. We do live in a world of free speech. Now, in 1987, Roy flew in for a last-minute bill-topping performance on a live at the London Palladium, and it is said that he didn't have his Gibson with him because he just didn't trust the airline baggage handling.
No, I can tell you about that.
Do you know if that is true? And someone is alleged to have who had one of these guitars and said he just wouldn't lend it to anybody, and they said, who's it for? And they said Roy Orbison, and let him have it. Do you know who the person would be?
I don't know about this. Maybe you can. And it was in 1987.
1987, yeah.
Was the whole band with him, or was it just Roy?
It was just Roy on stage. I think that there'd been another artist who just couldn't make it.
Yeah.
And it was like a cancellation booking, basically. I think he flew across.
You know, it seems to me, I heard something about this, but I don't know. I don't know this story. I really don't. I can't help you on that, but I can tell you that there were nightmares about, we'd go to Texas to play, and they'd send our instruments to Hawaii, and we'd be in a big mess. So that's the reason we started carrying things on board with us.
Did you take several guitars?
Yes.
Each?
Yes.
Yeah. For that purpose?
Yes, and usually, see the roadie, which, and not a derogatory term toward the people who drove the truck, but it was Tommy Dills and Bob Underwood. Sometimes it was impossible for them to make it from point A to point B. Like if we were on the plane, they couldn't physically make it, so we'd have to put instruments on board and rent amps and stuff, sound equipment wherever we went. But I know we had a problem with that, our stuff getting sent to different places, and so we started carrying stuff on board. So it's very possible that his guitar didn't make it.
So I think as well, when tours and that are put together, quite often the itinerary is not logical in terms of travelling, where you can be here one day and then you're up there the next, and then you're down here somewhere else, instead of going from one town to the next, and that's how a tour should be.
Yeah, well, bookers don't do that. They have a world map, and they throw darts at it. And that's where you have to go.
Yeah.
It's like one time this is no joke. We racked up so many miles, so many airline miles in about 1 week. We started out somewhere around the New York area, and then we went to like Edmonton, Alberta, and then we went to Vancouver, BC, and then we were in Washington and Oregon, and then we went back to Miami, and then we went to LA, and then we had to come back all the way across the United States again in like 3 days, and it was like an ungodly amount of mileage in about 7 days, But you'd think since we were down here in Miami and we were going to do another gig in Florida, they could have been like one night Monday and one night Tuesday, but not so. Monday in Miami, and then Los Angeles on Tuesday, and then Wednesday back in Fort Lauderdale or somewhere, something like that,
Can you remember the set for the shows? I mean, was it ever varied? I mean, for example, if Roy was down under, I assume he would play Penny Arcade.
You know what? I can't remember us doing that down there. I can remember us doing several different songs in several different places, but I can't remember. Boy, that's hard to remember. There were so many dates, so many places.
Yeah. And you didn't keep a diary?
I did, but if I had it in front of me, I could tell you where and all of this, but I couldn't tell you the set list. I mean, we pretty much did a set list that turned out to be like a 54-minute show every night. Sometimes they'd want us to do like an hour and a half, and so we would go out and we'd play a longer intro. Roy gave the band a lot of freedom. We'd extend solos in the middle of the show. We'd extend the solos up front. We would do an intro before Roy ever walked on, and sometimes
I do have a tape where you've got the girls more or less singing him on.
Yeah, well, it was more than that, because that tape in before the girls ever sang him on, there was like 10 or 15 minutes of us playing.
Yeah.
So that added time to the show, you know. But Roy did pretty much the same show every night, you know, basically 54 minutes. That is, if he didn't talk. When he talked, you know, he would tell his one joke. And would you like for me to tell you that?
Please
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Well, I can't remember where it was placed in the show, but he would say, here's a song that we used to do before President Nixon. And then he'd pause for 10 seconds and say, was elected. And that was his joke. And sometimes nobody would laugh. And if nobody laughed, then he would laugh.
The impression was that he... Yes, I remember now. I think the impression was that he'd been summoned to play this. But by the way he said it, and when he's now by saying was elected, the penny's just dropped for me. Yes, now I understand the joke, but it's taken me some years to actually work that one out. What mementos do you still have of your time with Roy?
Oh, I got picture after picture after picture after picture, and a lot of stuff, man. I've got
Things you'll never ever part with.
well, I'll be happy to share them with my friends.
But it's things that hold the memories, and Roy gave me this because, or we were doing such
I
and
mean,
such.
I've got a guitar that Roy gave me. I've got so many pictures. I was telling Glenn and I think I told you too, Martin, that and Wesley also, that we had Roy's 50th birthday party, and there was a cake. And after the party was over with, everybody was out of the room, and there was this little statue on top of the birthday cake of, it was like Roy. It was like a guy with black hair, and I think he had on sunglasses, and he was wearing a blue coat, and he had a guitar, and it was just left on the cake, and I took it off the cake, and
Was the party during a tour or a show?
oh yeah, it was. We were on the road. It was his 50th birthday on the road.
Would it be announced?
Excuse me.
Would people know? Was there an announcement made, or it just
Oh,
go?
wow.
He wouldn't.
You know, I
He's
don't
not the
know.
type of person who probably would
I
do that.
can't remember. Can't remember that. But that's a good question. I'm sorry I can't answer it.
Can you tell me how you actually come to hear that he'd passed?
Well, yeah. I was lying in bed at 6:30 one morning, and I heard it on the radio. And it just kind of, I thought, surely not. And that's how I heard it, and it was the truth.
Yeah, because these sort of things, I mean, I think it takes you some time to try and accept it, and you want them to say, oh, sorry, there's been a mistake.
Yeah, I definitely wanted that to be a mistake.
Yeah.
He was too young, man. Too young. 52, was it 52? That's far too young to leave this planet with that much talent.
Now the guitar that you've got, I mean, I've been looking up to have a look at it. It's got quite a few autographs.
Oh yeah, the red guitar. It's a custom made guitar. It's got a scalloped fretboard on it. It's got a spider web pickguard on it. It's got a Floyd Rose whammy bar on it. It's got EMG pickups, and it's totally custom made. And we were doing a show in Anaheim, California, and George Harrison, Tom Petty, and Jeff Lynne all came to the show. And they came backstage, and we had gotten there early so we could do a sound check, you know, and we were just kind of hanging out backstage, and I was playing that guitar, and I had already met George Harrison and Jeff Lynne and Tom Petty. And
was this while the Wilbury project was still going on before they'd actually released it?
This was in March of 1988.
Right. Yeah.
So whatever was going on, it was going on. And so anyhow, I'm playing this guitar, and George Harrison is sitting there, and he looked, and he says, he just came in closer and closer and closer, and I thought, what's going on? And he was looking at that neck on that guitar. He says, what kind of neck is that? And I said, it's a scalloped fretboard. And a scalloped fretboard simply means that if you look at a regular fretboard on a guitar, it's like flat, kind of like this table.
Yeah.
All except it has a slight curvature. It has a kind of an arched radius, so your finger can fit, you know.
Yeah.
And anyhow, this particular guitar has had, like, between the frets, it's all been scalloped out where it looks like a boat, like, you know, if you were to look at a canoe from one end of the canoe to the other, you could see how it's kind of dug out in the center, you know. And, well, that's kind of the way this guitar is, and so it's like playing on air. The only thing that you're actually really touching, if you have a light touch, is the frets. You're not really feeling the wood, although you can feel the wood if you press hard enough, you know. But it's like when you're playing solos, it's like playing against air, you know. And so George was very interested in this, and he says, can I play it? And I says, absolutely, you know. And he was sitting there drinking a Heineken, one of the nicest, most unassuming people you'd ever want to meet in your life. And he took the guitar and played it, and he loved it. He sat there for about 30 minutes and played it, and then he asked Jeff Lynne, he said, Jeff, have you seen this guitar? You know, and Jeff Lynne sat down and played it. And then, you know, they were talking to Tom, and Tom Petty sat down and played it, you know. And I got the bright idea. I said, could I get you guys to sign this guitar? And so if you look, and all of them signed it on the back of the guitar because, well, they just signed it on the back of the guitar. So George signed it first. If I had the guitar here, I could show you what he did. He wrote something in Sanskrit underneath his name. And I says, what is that, George? And he says, it's Sanskrit. He says, it means Om Christ. And I says, well, what does that mean exactly? And he said, it just means Christ is everything. And he looked up at me and he says, you're not going to sell this guitar, are you? And I said, no. And then Jeff Lynne signed it, and then Tom Petty signed it, and then I got the bright idea. I says, well, let's get Roy to sign it, you know. So Roy signed it above George Harrison's name. They went right down the road, you know, all of them, you know. And so Roy signed it up at the top. And
Bob Dylan?
And, well, I'll get to that. Bob Dylan did sign it, but he did not sign it that night. So I have all of the traveling Wilburys on there. But the funny thing was, Roy signed it, and then we went out and did the show. And it was very hot in wherever we were playing in Anaheim. I know it was in Anaheim. I don't remember the venue, but I got real hot and sweaty, and where the guitar hit my rib cage, my right rib cage, it kind of wore off the O a little bit on Orbison. And so I decided, you know, I didn't want to lose those signatures, even though they were signed with a Sharpie pen. I rubbed off part of that little O. I took it back to Nashville, and I got a plastic coating. This guitar maker back in Nashville put it on there for me, who made the guitar. And so the signatures, you know, nothing would happen to those signatures.
Preserved.
And that's right, preserved. And then later on, Bob Dylan did a concert in town, and I got him to sign the guitar through his manager, because I did not know Bob Dylan. His management was kind enough to introduce me, and that's really a long, funny story. But Bob didn't sign the guitar like most people would sign it with a pen, you know, the way people normally write with a pen. He held it at the very end of the pen, like a brush, and he held it like 8 or 10 inches from the guitar and signed his name, like he was painting with a brush. It's kind of halfway on there and halfway off, but it's on there.
Well, it is unique in the sense that, I mean, for the time that the Wilburys, the original Wilburys, were together, it must be a really unique memento.
Well, it truly is, and you know, all
Priceless.
of them played it, you know, with the exception of Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan did not play the guitar. He only signed his name. You know, his management, when he saw all of this, he was telling me about, you know, price that he was getting for Bob Dylan posters, because supposedly Bob Dylan doesn't sign a lot of autographs, you know. And he says, you need to give me this guitar and let me take it to Sotheby's or Christie's and do the auction thing in England. You know, I wouldn't do it. He told me it was worth a certain amount of money, which could be or could not be. I don't know, but it was,
Yeah.
you know.
Could set you up in your old age.
Well, you know,
but
it's very special, and you know, Roy and I had a lot of guitars that we horse traded around. You know, we had different guitars, and
were there any other signatures on the guitar?
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for reminding me of that. Elvis's guitar player Scotty Moore and I we know each other, and he signed it, and Chet Atkins signed it, and Vince Gill happened to be over at my house one day, and I got him to sign it, and I won't go into that while he was at my house, but he signed it, and Willie Nelson signed it. I did a show with him, and let's see, God, I'm going, Dan Huff. Dan Huff also signed it. He's a great guitar player, and an old friend of mine. He produces everybody in the country right now. He's played on so many hit records. He produced some of the Faith Hill things, and you name it. He's got just hit after hit on the radio right now. He's just a really good friend. He was over there with Vince Gill the time that they were over at my house, and I got both of them to sign it. And you know, they were both very impressed with the guitar, and I can't remember who else. Hank Garland. Hank Garland was one of my idols, one of my on guitar. Hank Garland was the most recorded guitar player in the world up until he had his accident in 1960. And Hank and I are just dear friends, and I got him to sign it. He was famous for writing the Sugarfoot Rag, and he was a great jazz guitarist and country guitarist and any kind of guitarist. He was just, had he not had his accident, I feel like the course of guitar playing would be totally, he would have changed the course of guitar playing. Yeah, he was an amazing player. I mean, I still listen to Hank Garland 41 years later, and more than that, really. I mean, that's when Hank had his wreck. It's been 41 years ago. I still walk away from his record shaking my head. He was so great. But I've been very fortunate to have been around so many great people. Very fortunate.
How's your voice going?
We
wanted some water earlier on.
Listen, I'm fine. Are we running out of time? I don't mean to wear y'all out.
I should get back to the ceremony.
Yep. Okay, right. Well, thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome, Mark.
For the time.